if we did not do anything about climate change, the damage that it causes would accelerate, become worse and worse as we go on through the current century, and becomes much higher in 2100 than it is in 2050. That's why we need to mitigate, because you cannot just rely on adaptation to remove those kind of costs. Therefore, the key elements of the analysis are to say how we can combine the adaptation with mitigation to get the minimum damage caused by climate change. The way in which the study is done is to look at various options, from those that cost almost nothing to those that are much more expensive. The total possibility is to reduce emissions by 50% up to about 2030, though in some cases at quite a high cost. But a lot of reductions can be achieved at either no cost at all or at a cost of less than $50 or $100 per tonne of carbon dioxide, which are easily affordable for the countries that we're looking at and would make a very large contribution to climate change in future. The industries in which you can do most in terms of abatement in the next 10 or 20 years is the power sector, and secondly also the transport sector, in both cases by using fuels differently and by using different fuels, particularly by using more gas and by using the fuels coal or gas much more efficiently than at present. And those typically have a low cost and make a big contribution to emissions from particularly China, but also from other countries in the region. The relationship between air quality and the emissions of carbon dioxide is very strong, particularly in transport, but also in some other sectors. And therefore, reducing emissions of carbon dioxide should make a substantial contribution to China's goal over the next 10 years or so of greatly improving its urban air quality, especially in places like Beijing, but throughout the country as well. Climate proofing is the process of preparing infrastructure for weather conditions as well as climate conditions that are likely to exist not today, but in 20 or 40 years' time. That is a process that requires a great deal of detailed planning. It depends on changing the way engineers behave, and therefore is as much a matter of education as it is just of spending money. Don't build things which you know are going to get damaged by future climate conditions. And the most obvious thing that we have learnt in the OECD is to avoid building in floodplains, in areas that are going in future to be highly vulnerable to floods caused by changes in patterns of precipitation and extreme storms and the like. The coastal adaptation is a consequence of the likelihood that the sea level will rise, and also associated with that storms will be worse and therefore there will be higher storm surges. By building dikes, in particular, seawalls, it will be possible to protect against the damage caused by sea level rise, and the costs of doing so are very much cheaper than the costs of just allowing the damage to occur. There is enormous value to be gained from comparing circumstances in different countries and then bringing the knowledge and the lessons that have been learnt in the different countries in the regions together. At the margin, the costs of mitigation are much cheaper in China than they are in, for example, Japan and Korea. That means that if we were to have a trading arrangement or if we have some other exchange arrangement, we could reduce the costs of meeting a given total for the region as a whole more cheaply, in effect, by putting more of the burden on China, presumably compensated by the other countries, and a trading scheme such as in Europe or other arrangements would have that effect and would potentially save up to 25% of the cost of achieving the particular goals we were talking about earlier. A region like East Asia, which is a very large region, very important, One can learn a great deal from other parts of the world with their experiments, but also can contribute a great deal to other parts of the world by essentially devising their own ways of cooperation, which might be in turn copied by, built on by other countries, including by Europe and the United States. So cooperation on both sides is essential, both to learn from and to provide lessons for the rest of the world. Doing nothing, we all agree, is not an option, but doing something needs to go beyond simply reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We need to do a whole lot of very detailed practical studies on the adaptation front as well. And the more we work to help countries do that, the better it will be for all of us.